We begin the chapter with a high-speed chase as a bloodthirsty pack of hardhounds chasing Chase, Richard, Kahlan, and Zed. The warden and the wizard are unconscious, and Richard knows if they stop, they are dead. The horses are frightened and have chosen to run. Their riders don't argue with them either. The howls of the hardhounds energize their effort. There is water and mud created by the thin gray clouds, somewhat heavy with rain, which the wizard had summoned to hide Darkenrall's tracer to Richard, his magical ball and chain. Richard lets Kahlan's horse run in front because he wants to stay between her and the hardhounds. Richard wishes he could turn away from the path leading them to the pass because the hounds are coming in fast and Richard knows he won't be able to outrun them for very long. Richard believes the best course of action is to stick to the path and try to make it to the swamp Chase was talking about before he was struck down. Richard is unsure how much further it is to safety and that he doesn't know himself if it's going to turn out for good or for bad or what he's going to find when he gets there. He only knows this is his only choice that he has, which he thinks has a chance of succeeding. As Richard and Kahlan flee the hardhounds, Richard notices that the day is coming to an end and it will be nightfall soon. The rain feels cold and sharp on his face. Richard also expresses concern for his friends. He knows being tied to the back of a running horse isn't the best method of transporting someone who is injured. Richard hopes that they'll be okay and wake up soon. Kahlan isn't looking anywhere except straight ahead. She is laser focused on her task of running the horse down the path to safety. The road twists and turns until Richard starts noticing fewer and fewer dead trees. The foliage is slowly being replaced with oak, ash, and maple trees, followed quickly by cedar. After a drop in the trail, Richard sees the Sco Swamp. Richard notices that the trail is barely above the water to the swamp. The hardhounds are still attempting to chase them. Richard sees his only chance at survival is to cross the water and go to a nearby small island in the center, poking up just above the water's surface. Richard points at the island and says he isn't sure, but that's where they need to go to remain safe. Kahlan doesn't hesitate and follows his direction immediately. As Kahlan goes through the water, we learn it's only 3 or 4 feet deep. Kahlan is focused on what is ahead of her. Richard is paying more and more attention, scanning for threats, and he sees large brown snakes with copper-colored splotches on their back, which are swimming around them under the surface of the water. Richard realizes they aren't going to make it to the island in time before the snakes reach them. Richard has never seen snakes this big before, and he sees a lot of them, and they're coming right for him. He gets the Sword of Truth ready to use against one of them, and the first one gets too close, but as soon as the tip of the sword touches the water, the magic of the sword makes the snakes swim away. While Richard and Kahlan are crossing the river, the hardhounds make it to the spot where they left the trail. The hounds look like they want to enter the water, but they don't. They growl and snarl and said, as long as the sword tip is in the water, the snakes stay away and they make it to the island, surrounded by cedars, poplar tree, and iris flowers. Richard is relieved when none of the snakes follow them onto dry land. Richard uses a tarp to make a shelter to keep the rain out. The swamp and the rain make starting a fire impossible. Richard settles for a couple of candles to provide some light. Both of them are worried about Zed and Chase. Neither one of them knows what to do to help them. Richard says their best option is to make it to South Haven and see if they can find a healer there. He also decides it would be wise to build a litter to drag his friends along the ground so they won't be bounced around riding the way they were before. Both of them wrap their injured friends up in some blankets while they sit together sharing the candlelight. They can see pairs of glowing yellow eyes staring back at them through the trail. The hounds are looking for a way to get to them, but are unable to do much besides get frustrated by their own impotence. Kahlan still isn't sure why the hardhounds haven't followed them and says, Richard, I can't believe the hardhounds haven't followed us. And Richard says, Kahlan, you aren't going to believe this, but I think they didn't follow us because of the snakes in the water. Kahlan, who never even saw any snakes, says that she never even saw any snakes. Then she does her best Indiana Jones impersonation when she tells Richard she doesn't like snakes. Richard says the snakes don't seem to be the problem so long as the Sword of Truth is in the water, and he doesn't think the snakes will be causing them any harm. Kahlan isn't satisfied with the answer and tells him she would have liked to have known about the snakes that were crossing the water instead of finding out about them afterwards. Richard reminds her that they had bigger fish to fry just then, and making her scared of the snakes would have been counterproductive, especially since he seemed to have them under control with the sword. Richard and Kahlan enjoy a meal of bread and sausage, washed down with rainwater collected from the tarp of their shelter. Kahlan asks Richard if he thinks the thing that stood behind the boundary wall was really her sister. He says no. He thinks they're able to conjure people that the person wants to see and use their close relationship with them to draw them into the boundary. So it's an illusion, is what Richard says. It's all an illusion. Richard tells Kahlan it seems strange that the thing from the boundary was able to hit Zed, Chase, and Kahlan so easily, but wasn't able to find Richard. Kahlan says she found that odd as well, but says it looked like the creature was attacking him blindly. For a moment, Richard thinks it might have been the sword of truth, but he quickly convinces himself that doesn't make any sense. The thing in the boundary didn't behave as though it was afraid of him, it just didn't know where he was. He also realizes that there was no pain after he cut down the thing in the boundary, and Zed told him if he ever killed someone with the sword, there was going to be pain. Richard thinks maybe it's all in his head, and none of it's real. But he takes that back when he sees Chase and Zed lying in front of him unconscious. Both of them finish their meal of bread and sausage, and Richard removes an apple from his backpack for the both of them to share, reducing the total number of apples estimated to be inside Richard's backpack to 197. Richard asks Kahlan if she is tired, and she responds by mentioning that she is sore in places she cannot mention. She asks him what he knows about South Haven, and he says it's one of those towns where you don't feel safe inside it because the people inside that town have a habit of stealing things and making violence. Kahlan gives Richard the business when she makes sure that he can agree to leave them behind if he has to. And Richard thinks about this for a minute and describes what he thinks Kahlan is feeling. She hungers to stop Darkenrawl. She would stop at nothing. And she wants to know that he has the ability to go on at any cost. And that's what's bothering her, so he really makes sure he tries to understand that. Richard says to Kahlan, "Look at me. Look at me. I am the Seeker now. I will do whatever it takes to stop Darkenrawl, even if it means leaving my friends in the care of someone while we go on. But I won't make that choice unless I absolutely have no other option," which is excellent foreshadowing for Chapter 15 when they have no other option but to leave them with 80, the Bone Woman. Richard offers to take watch, but Kahlan says the snakes and the hearthounds would make it impossible for her to sleep. He says if she doesn't want to sleep, she can help him make a litter for Zed and Chase. While Chase is unconscious, he takes another one of his weapons and uses it to cut wood instead of cutting up enemies. Richard is pleased that Chase would outwardly show his disapproval if he were conscious enough to know what was going on. After telling himself a comforting lie, Richard takes a moment to wonder how he will feel if Chase and Zed don't get better, and he settles on what most of us do when we're faced with the health problems of a loved one. Neither one of them wants to sleep, but both of them are very tired. They settle for sitting next to each other. In a romantic candlelit moment, Kahlan gives every man reading hope that an incredibly specific combination of extenuating circumstances can lead a beautiful woman to cozy up next to them and take a nap on their shoulder. While at the same time, Richard gives every woman reading hope that in an equally incredibly specific combination of extenuating circumstances, the handsome man with rippling six-pack abs and a chiseled chin made from solid granite will cozy up next to them and keep the monsters away while they sleep, especially when he wakes her up when she's having a bad dream. Richard takes the opportunity to pull the old "let me put my arms around you and pull you close because you had a nightmare" move on Kahlan, and it works. She falls back asleep, and Richard touches the tooth his father gave him as he watches the Hearthounds. Kahlan convinces Richard to get some sleep, and when he wakes up, there's a tin cup of hot tea waiting for him. Kahlan is impressed by Kahlan's ability to use the only readily available source of heat to make water hot, as they both enjoy a sugary breakfast of dried fruit. Richard checks on Zed and Chase and finds out that Zed is breathing slower, his heart is beating normal, but his skin is cold and clammy. Even though Kahlan is afraid of the snakes, they both decide to haul ass to South Haven, but because they have so much stuff, they have to make 2 trips to get across the water. Richard narrates that he won't be able to use the litters to drag their friends until they reach a better road, and is forced to wait an entire sentence before the author introduces him to the better road. The litter does its job. They make it to South Haven, which is described as a collection of ramshackle, it's fun to say, ramshackle buildings placed along the forest and a beach. The buildings are in poor repair, and the streets are even more littered with trash and garbage than any major American city the general public is told isn't really that bad unless you start to statistically compare it to other places. Richard sees the inn and starts heading right for it. He tells Kahlan to be careful because the men here are dangerous, and Kahlan says, "No prob, fam. These people are the crew I run with, what?" Her response makes little sense to Richard, but he chooses not to ask what she means. Once they both enter the door, low-key Western-style music starts playing as all of the talking trails off. Richard gives the room a slow scan, like Gordon Ramsay doing a restaurant review, as he begins listing everything which needs improvement. What is all of this smoke? What is it? The 1940s? Fuck me. And look at this. Are those supposed to be tables? Because they look like piles of shit to me. I would pull up a board and sit down, but there aren't even any bloody chairs. Just benches. Bloody fucking benches. This floor is a sticky mess, so at least all the roaches are eating well. I mean, I don't get it. How could a place this dirty have any customers at all? The stairs have no handrail, and the whole mess smells like a tube gym sock dipped in leathery burnt chicken. Bloody hell. Richard notices the patrons of the inn look a bit too pleased to say Kahlan, crooked, toothless smiles and all. The innkeeper is described as a short, bald man wearing a wife-beater and something described as an apron which could have never been white. Interestingly enough, we never learn what the true color of this apron was. It seems to be implied that the apron used to be white and is supposed to be white, but the only words the author uses to describe it is in an apron that looked like it could have never been white. One could say the same about a blue apron or a red one. Richard notices the innkeeper seems to be the only one in the room besides him who is able to keep from undressing Kahlan with their eyes. Richard takes this as a sign that the man shouldn't be judged as harshly as the company he makes a living off of, and he trusts him with the information that could put Kahlan in danger. The man folds his arms and says he doesn't want any trouble. The innkeeper knows what sort of customers he has, and Richard looks like he's going to be far more trouble than it's worth. The man said he's just trying to live his life here, and Richard says with menace that he doesn't want any trouble either. Don't you get me started. He looks into Richard's eyes to take a measure of him, and for reasons which are never fully explained, he agrees to let them stay by asking how many rooms he needs. Not wanting to press his luck, he says one will be enough. A big guy stands up, dripping with booze, and his hand on the handle of a knife. He says Kahlan is a good-looking woman of negotiable affection, and he wants Richard to share. The big drunk man says Kahlan's a whore, and I'll be sleeping with her along with everyone else in this room, or there will be trouble. Richard, filled with feelings of defensiveness, rage, lethal intent, and jealousy, has all of his instincts telling him there is only one solution to this problem. He needs to kill every person in the room. Kahlan isn't currently acting under the decision that there's only one solution to this problem, and she stops Richard from killing anyone and says, she isn't a whore in this situation, Richard is. Richard Pfeiffer, heartland, heartthrob, gigolo, ready and willing to serve as your guide to sexy time. Kahlan pulls the old I'm an overworked and underappreciated important woman who finds it easier to trade money for favors of the flesh. To make her point, she gives Richard a high five on his butt cheek. And it works. The men break out in laughter, and no one has to kill anyone. The innkeeper thanks Kahlan for trying something before the mass murder and tells everyone what a shame it would be if his only real possession of value in this petri dish of health code violations, which also doubles as a meeting place for a group of rapists, it would just be awful if anything bad were to happen to that. The innkeeper tells Richard and Kahlan to head upstairs. He knows his customers well enough to know that they would show some aggression towards any sign of compassion and would see their injured comrades as a weakness, which would undermine Kahlan's "we're really no better than you are, so don't worry about us" strategy that she used just a moment ago. Richard isn't so sure about trusting the innkeeper with the lives of his friends. He doesn't like the idea. And both of those things are true at the same time. Richard doesn't like the idea that those men would see them caring for the injured as an invitation to attack. The innkeeper, of all people, pulls the wizard's second rule and tells Richard his good intentions would put their friends in more danger than they already are. The man finally introduces himself as Bill, and Richard tries to figure out what to do by looking at Kahlan. Her face is still unreadable to him, so he looks at Bill instead. Richard sees a tough guy who's been through a lot, and also feels like he's looking at someone who is telling the truth about their good intentions. Richard agrees to take Bill's advice and goes upstairs with Kahlan. Once they arrive in the room, they're met with accommodations which appear to belong to the type of building they are inside. It contains the bare minimum of furniture, smells awful, and given the state of the spit-covered wall, as a reader, I am surprised to hear how easily Kahlan decides to sit down on the bed. Because of the semen. I'm saying that in an inn full of thieves and rapists, they would care little about spilling semen on the bed and not cleaning it up. I'm saying that the sheets probably make a crackling noise as certain bonds holding the fabric into a rigid shape are broken. Richard is mad at Kahlan and tells her she can't believe that she just did that in front of everybody. How could she say such a thing? Shocking. Shocking, isn't it? Kahlan tells Richard he's not seeing the big picture, and by focusing on what people would just as soon do to him, by focusing on people who would just as soon see him dead and lying in a ditch, he's putting his life in danger by caring about what those people think for no good reason. She says she would do anything, and I do mean anything, to protect him, even if it means giving him an unannounced butt-cheek high five in front of a room full of people. Richard is trying to find the perfect combination of words to express how angry he was at those men, because even though the situation is resolved, he's still trapped inside his singular view that the solution he had chosen was the only one available. Richard lets out a breath and lets out the anger with it. He agrees with Kahlan and apologizes for almost causing a lot of trouble with very little to gain from it. Oh no, my page. Coming soon, turning the page. Kahlan rewards Richard's apology with a long hug, which is interrupted by Bill knocking on the door and bringing up two of his injured friends. While this is happening, the innkeeper's son sees Kahlan and instantly falls hopelessly in love, which Richard understands when it happens to him, but doesn't appreciate when someone else does it. Bill says he knows Chase and that the boundary warden stays here sometimes. He also says that the people downstairs wouldn't take the news very well if they found out he was staying here. They would tear him apart. Richard tells Bill those men can try to give them trouble, but he makes it clear that would make him use the sword of truth, and using the sword of truth makes him angry. And they wouldn't like him when he's angry. Dun, dun, dun. Richard gives Kahlan some money and tells her to convince a young, impressionable boy to spend the night outside in the rain with their horses, telling her he's confident he will do it because if she asks him to do it, he will listen. Personally, I've always liked the part of the chapter when Bill tells his son, "Don't forget to bring a towel," and then immediately adds to make sure that it's one of the good towels. I was always curious what the towels he brought looked like, but the author leaves that completely up to the reader's imagination. They aren't referenced as being filthy, but to me, the smallest details are the ones that are the most interesting. What does a clean towel look like to Bill? Is it the one that's only slightly stained, but just a tiny bit? Has it gone from white to off-white over time, but still looks relatively good? Perhaps it's a brand new and pristine towel from a surplus of supplies kept in stock for his business. Or maybe it's from the general goods store he also runs in addition to the inn. We are never given that information and must make do on what we have. Since it is my choice, I've chosen to imagine a mostly clean towel which looks to have been washed and cared for, but is slightly discolored from frequent use with one or two specks, only slightly larger than the head of a pin, stained in one of the corners. Given the care of the rest of Bill's linens, I feel this would most accurately fit what he would consider a clean towel to be. Bill tells Richard and Kahlan that while there is no healer, there might be someone nearby who would be able to help them. He tells them about 80 the bone woman and says she's only a few hours away. He also says the people who stay at his inn are superstitious and won't go near the place because she lives near the boundary. He also says he can't prove it, but rumor has it people she doesn't like also have a habit of dropping dead. Richard asks why Bill is helping them, and he said Chase is a friend of his, and the boundary wardens are good for business. Richard decides that since he's going somewhere to ask someone for something, he shouldn't show up empty-handed. He asks Bill to put together some supplies, and Bill the Council of Heartland. Bill says if it's for official business, then he'll be reimbursed, and then complains about his high tax rate. Don't even get me started on taxes. Kahlan gives Randy a silver coin and tells him all of the horses belong to her and that keeping those horses safe is the only thing standing between her and a terrible death. Randy is eager to help and runs off. The innkeeper says he'll take care of the supplies and bring them some food. Richard thanks him, and Bill says he can thank them by signing an itemized list of different things he's helping them with. Before fully committing to gather supplies and other things on Richard's word alone, Bill runs a credit check on him when he asks if anyone would recognize his signature. Richard name drops his brother Michael's new appointment to first counselor, and Bill is suddenly very worried about what's going to happen to him if Richard decides that his accommodations are not befitting a man who is the brother of another important man. Bill is worried that if Richard becomes displeased with him, he'll have the army come and cause him all sorts of trouble in the name of official state business. Once Richard convinces Bill that he's on his side, the innkeeper tries to pull the old, well, since it all comes out in the wash anyway, what's the harm in adding a few line items to pad this invoice like everyone else already does, ha-cha-cha-cha-cha. But Richard isn't having any of that noise and tells Bill no. Bill doesn't take it personally and tells Richard that Chase always tells him no too, and that his request was, all just a test. Yeah, that's it, one big test. And you passed it too. Good job, Richard, lousy cheapskate. Richard won't lie to the government, which also means he probably doesn't cheat on his taxes either. But he does tell Bill it isn't wrong if he chooses to give him some silver for helping him out, which he does. Bill says he'll try to keep the men away from Richard and Kahlan's room, and Richard says that's good because he plans to kill anyone who tries to get inside. Bill tells Richard he thinks that would be made much better. Let's do another take. Ding. Bill tells Richard he thinks he would have made a much better first counselor than his brother because he seems to care about doing the right thing. He also adds that looking out for the public good is not how people get elected into positions of leadership. When Bill leaves, they eat dinner together, and Kahlan apologizes to Richard for this whole record number of consecutive days where he almost gets killed thing. And Richard puts on his best, I'm only your best friend smile and says, all those near-death experiences are nothing to be concerned about so long as we can sit together, talk, and have hugs sometimes. And while Kahlan can see how to tell a story to make criminals and rapists think she isn't interesting, and she can see Richard almost made a mistake earlier, she still can't see why kids love the taste of Cinnamon Toast Crunch. And she also can't see why Randy was so willing to watch their horses for them. Richard reminds her that as a pretty woman, men will do things for her if she asks them nicely. They take turns keeping watch so that any forced entry will be met with force instead of a second and more personal forced entry. When it is almost time to get up and leave, Bill knocks on the door and tells them trouble has found them.